Hello, and welcome to Storytime with Magpie, where you get to hear one of the crazy, hilarious, and true stories from my life while we watch Speedpaint of the, I'd call it the punchline of the story, the actual haunting of the story, and which brings me into what the story is today. It is the haunting of my grandmother from beyond the grave. This is the first time I'm doing this, so bear with me. I'm probably going to sound nervous. This is also unscripted, so prepare yourself for all of the mess-ups. I guarantee there's going to be quite a few of them. But let's get into it, shall we? We need to give a little bit of context, some background story here about my grandmother. My grandmother was a very interesting woman. I would say that she was not a great grandmother. She was a very frugal person, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but she was not very interested in cultivating a relationship with her family. She would much rather spend time and money on herself than with her grandchildren, which were mostly granddaughters, actually. She only had one grandson. And that was kind of sad. You know, growing up, you wonder why grandma doesn't really want to spend very much time with you. I know that I really didn't see her much outside of holidays, and the few memories I do have, I'm going to call them interesting. For example, I was 6 years old for Christmas, and yes, this is deviating from the story, but I promise it's funny. I was 6 years old, and for Christmas from her, I got a glass Q-tip holder. Yeah. What is a 6-year-old going to do with a glass Q-tip holder? What? Just what? And then I remember a Christmas years later where my youngest sister was 10 at the time, and my grandmother was obsessed with making everything equal, making everything, everybody gets the same thing, everybody gets the same dollar store stuff. And for some reason, she lumped my 10-year-old sister with all the 2 and 3-year-olds in the family, great-grandkids. And so she got her a Dora the Explorer inflatable bouncy ball that 3-year-olds can fit on to bounce. Had to look her in the eye and say thank you for that. She still talks to me about that years later, just what the actual crap was that about? So yeah, that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of who this woman was. So fast forward to 2016. My wife, then girlfriend, was going to move in with me for the first time. And it was just so happened to be around the same time that my uncles and my dad were going to insist that my grandmother go into an assisted living home. She was living on her own in a house that was completely hoarded out. She was a hoarder too. Isn't that fun? We found food in her pantry that expired in the 80s. I'm not kidding. So it was bad. It was pretty bad. Her memory was really failing her. She was forgetting to eat. She was forgetting to take her medicine. She looked super skinny, super unhealthy. We were all very, very concerned. But she was very resistant. She was very resistant to us trying to help her because she saw it more as, well, we're trying to rip her home away from her, which I get. No one wants to be taken away from their home, right? And now that I'm watching the Speedpaint back with you, I just want to say I'm not going to... If you know what this building is, good job. You know exactly the kind of person my grandmother was. If not, all you need to know is that she was very religious, okay? This is a very religious, very homophobic person. And yes, it's a little horse with the little trumpet on top. It's just that the last little detail is perfect. So, my grandmother had all my uncles and some of my cousins over, and I went over to her house too, and she was in her bedroom and whining and bitching and crying like a child. I walked into the bedroom to see what was going on, and she was like, "Screech, I don't want to leave. No, you can't make me. This is my home. Read." And they were all just like, "No, this is unhealthy. We're finding bugs," and it was just bad. It was bad all around. And I noticed that she had a king-size bed, and it was a really nice one when you first look at it. It had a bed frame that had storage in the headboard and a little built-in counter type of thing on the headboard, which again, looked great, looked very nice. And she can't take a king size bed with her to the home. So I said, hey, Grandma, you know, like, I know that a lot of the reason why you're kind of resistant to this is because you want to make sure that you get your money's worth out of the things in your home, even though hoarders in general think that their stuff is worth far more than it actually is. That's kind of just a part of the mental health aspect of hoarding behavior. And she looked at me and she was like, no. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm moving, so I could really use it. And I know you're not going to use it anymore. No. And I'm like, okay. And then my uncles started like jumping in and they're like, well, why not? Like, this is a big opportunity. And this is, you know, this is a really big thing for your granddaughter. She's like, this bed is worth so much money. And yeah, now she's sounding like Trixie. You know, everyone's attitude is just Trixie. Also, I'm playing around with my my pony design here, just as a side note, because I am watching Speedpaint back as I recount this story, and I just had a lot of fun. It's not like a permanent redesign. I wanted to update my look. So let me know in the comments what you think of the little changes I made here and there. Getting back to the story. She eventually confesses that she thinks this bed is worth $500. She claimed it was only about 10 years old and that it was the greatest thing that has ever been created for a bed. By the end of the night, I finally convinced her to part with it for $200. Worst $200 I've ever spent, by the way. Worst. And this is not a woman who needs funds. She had about 1.2 million, maybe even more in the bank account at that point. Like I said, Grandma was not the greatest person. She just wasn't. And of course, I wasn't going to tell her that I needed a bigger bed because my lesbian lover was moving in with me, because then she'd never part with it. She'd rather burn it at that point. But yeah, so I got the bed. That's the point, right? Grandma moves into this assisted living home. She is very, very angry at literally all of her family for taking her home away from her and taking her hoard away from her. Her health was failing, though. There was literally nothing that she could do. There was nothing we could do. Unfortunately, it was one of those things where we just kind of saw her deteriorate. I can words. Let's pretend I said that right. Over time. And I remember that we really only saw her on holidays and when we would go and visit her. She hoarded out the assisted living home. She would sneak back to her house. She still had a key, of course. And she'd take all of the stupid little tchotchke things and purposefully leave family portraits and family memorabilia behind because she was very anti-family at that point. We were all out together. She wanted nothing to do with us. We'd all come visit and be nice and, you know, tell her that we loved her and everything. And nope, she was not having it. So every single time I saw my grandmother, I'm not kidding you, this is verbatim what she would say to me. I'd say, hi, how are you? And she'd say, oh, hi, how's the bed? Every time. For 3 years. Every time I saw her, it was never, hi, how are you? Hi, thanks for visiting. Hi, Merry Christmas. No. It's, how's the bed? So eventually I just kind of got used to the idea of telling her, oh, the bed's great. In reality, that bed was the worst bed I've ever had in my life. We found out it was 40 years old or more. We didn't use the mattress because ew, but we used the box springs and the frame. And it was so uncomfortable that I would roll off that bed in my sleep. My wife made so much fun of me because I was that uncomfortable in that horrible thing, but I spent so much money on it. So much money that didn't even need to go to this millionaire. Anyway, I have issues. Right. So after a year, we got rid of it. We got rid of that horrible thing. But to Grandma, this was the greatest bed that's ever bedded. In 2019, my grandmother, her health it failed her. Unfortunately, she passed away. And I remember thinking when I was on my way to the funeral, I remember thinking, well, at least I never have to hear about that damn bed ever again. So I go to the funeral and the wake, which is just in her church building in her neighborhood. And I'm getting my plate of food, about to go sit down, and a woman walks in. She was not a part of the actual funeral. She only came for the wake. And she walks right up to me and is like, oh, hey, you're Mag, right? And I remember that freaked me out. Okay, that's the spooky thing number one, because how did she know that? I've never seen this woman before in my life. My grandmother did not have any images of me in her home. I mean, I have all girl cousins except for one. My sisters and I look pretty closely the same too. So how she knew it was me freaked me out to start off with. So here I am holding my plate of food like, yeah, hi. It's nice to meet you. And she goes, oh, my name is, such and such. I was a really good friend of your grandmother's. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry we have to meet under these circumstances. And she goes, yeah, me too. She was a great woman. And in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, well, we'll differ on our explanations of greatness here. But of course, I'm being nice. And I kid you not, the next words out of this woman's mouth were, so how's the bed? I remember I stood there with the most dumbstruck, shocked look on my face of anyone. You cannot tell me that my grandmother from beyond the grave somehow possessed this woman or influenced this woman to continue to harass me about the freaking bed. I thought I was free, but no. She's probably pissed because she finally now knows potentially that the bed is in the dump. It is trashed. It was horrible. Yeah. So that is how my grandmother haunted me from beyond the grave. At the funeral. Couldn't even wait. This is my pony depiction of that haunting moment, which is silly in retrospect, but I swear to you, it was probably one of the scariest, most out-of-body experiences in that moment, just in the sense of like, how can this be real? How is this happening right now? I will forever regret taking a king-size bed frame from a hoarder. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm thinking about doing some more fun story times from my crazy past. I have a lot of really hilarious things that I did or witnessed or was haunted by, apparently. So please leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. And if you have more questions about this insane religious woman, thank you so much for watching and indulging me with this. And I will see you guys in a future video. Bye-bye!